So, what exactly happens when you're a millionaire and you have to start over at age 37? That is the topic today, and this is on my own story. So, I became a multimillionaire at 27. That is cash in the bank. That was after selling a major company that took over Google searches for the word wedding dresses, as well as a lot of other wedding terms. But essentially, we were bought out. Me and my partner was bought out for a multi-million-dollar deal. Back in, it was just before the housing crisis, or technically, I guess, within the housing crisis. That was 2009. And at the time, it was so unreal because it wasn't essentially planned to build up this business to be sold. It just literally was luck meets preparation meets timing. And you hear about this a lot where, you're building something for essential like a cash flow income, for like a vision, and just the opportunity comes about that somebody wants to purchase it, or an opportunity comes out that you pivot and all of a sudden your company blows up. So my company essentially wasn't making a ton of money. It was making good money. It was making on average about $3,000 a week. However, the most valuable thing that my company had was the traffic alone. And it's such a small number now comparison to like social media numbers and things. But from what I remember, and I could be wrong, it was 42,000 brides, or at least people that were visiting the site a day. Now that seems so small in today's numbers because a single post can get you 42,000 people to like watch one of your posts. Like I said, the numbers, to think back about it, is changed drastically. Anyways, so essentially had that company, sold it, and then during the market, everything was so chaotic then with real estate. And we were also real estate investors, me and my partner. And at that time, we owned a significant amount. We owned, like, if I were trying to remember, we weren't yet to 55, because 55 was like the breaking point. We had like 30 properties. And even though it made some money, it was so minor compared to the online money that we were making through our other company. Because it just wasn't consistent. There was a lot of repairs. We were self-managing. And even though it's 30 doors, and I don't want to say properties, I want to say doors, because one was an apartment building. In fact, two of our apartment buildings, some were townhouses, one was land. So essentially, with that said, it was only maybe making us like $2,000 a month. It was very, very minor, I remember. And of course, by that time we had 2 kids. We didn't have 3 at the time. And we were just trying to figure out what the next step was for our revelation of that business that was this online, what in the online technology and the wedding industry. And with that said, it was definitely a hard thing to do, to kind of just be like, hey, is this what we're building for the next like 20, 30, 40 years? Or are we going to go ahead and cash out and do something else? And so that was a topic that we discussed for like 2-3 weeks. And there was a timeline. They were looking to buy us out, or they were going to start looking somewhere else because they really wanted to get in the wedding industry. This was a big investment what is it called, a hedge fund, and they invested in like hundreds of projects every single year. So there was like this major guy that really wanted to get into weddings, and we were like small enough for them to buy us out. So it wasn't like multi-millions. When I say millions, I don't even know if I can disclose it technically, because there was an NDA. I think by now it's already elapsed, but it was a small multi-million-dollar deal. And with that said, at first they were just like $1 million, we'll buy you out. We're just like, we just can't do it, because just the projections alone, we figured in the next 5 years we would already be hitting $1 million consistently. year after year. But the only thing is that wasn't money coming directly to us. That was paying for the employees. That was paying for the expansion of the business, the expansion of the employees in that business. So essentially we figured like if we were lucky, we might get like, $200,000 a year. And at that time it was such a big deal because we were only bringing home back in 2009 about $42,000 a year, which sounds nuts nowadays because people like would say that's like poverty now, but it was a big deal back then. And we lived in a really nice neighborhood, and our house was like a nice beautiful colonial and everything. So with that said, essentially that was my life when I was 27. And then skip forward 10 years after that, I lived on a new property that we needed to totally like gut and rehab, which is my property now. And it was a mess. It was a foreclosed estate house, 13,000 square feet with a horse farm, multiple outbuildings. And essentially it was a real struggle because by that time, during that 10-year period, we still didn't find nothing that really excited us to invest in. So we invested all our money into real estate, essentially trying to find out, okay, well, what do we want to do next? Where I got more involved in our kids' lives. I ended up homeschooling my kids. By that time I had 3, doing that full time and getting involved in all their things with co-ops and Girl Scouts and volunteering. And and I had a side business too. I started a couple different ones like eBay and Etsy, and I had one for a while on Amazon selling books, and even doing my own like art and like showcasing my art at galleries and stuff. So I was essentially doing other things while my ex, he was more involved in like sports and biking and wanting to be like out with the guys a lot. So we were really like diverging as a couple at that point, especially around the 10-year mark there. And so, well, technically probably like 5 years within that time frame, because that's when I remember like friction was really like heating up. So with that said, a 10-year mark, we ended up getting separated. Long story short, it was totally threw me off guard because we were building this empire together. We had a vision. We had things that we were building toward. We just bought a vacation home. We just got back together because he cheated on me, and I was finding out all this stuff, and I took him back, and there was D&B. So there was a lot to like mentally process, to like the process here at the home, because our house wasn't finished. It was like gutted a lot, and it was like a lot of like repair, and he was just gone all the time. And I was trying to raise the kids and the pets and everything, and the income and everything was not supporting it after a while. So with that said, there was a lot of friction, and then I went through this divorce as a separation, and then the divorce came during COVID, which was absolutely horrid because that took 3 years just to get through that divorce, because it was during that time period. So with that said, I had to start over, and I had to really like find myself again. And I didn't know who I was, because my whole persona, my whole like life since I was 19 to 37 was this married woman that supported her husband, and he had the vision and we were following his path. And I really had to come to the realization that technically he wasn't a part of our lives my whole marriage. Though he talked in a way that seemed like he had it all together or kind of figured it all out and what we were doing, essentially when we separated, he ended up taking everything for himself and wanting me to have every responsibility as a sole parent, an only parent. He didn't want to actually raise our kids at all, which I guess was no surprise. Looking back, it definitely shocked me at the time, because I was living in this fantasy, this illusion. And so with that said, rebuilding really came from my inner strength. I had to find myself. And with that, I found spirituality. I found my relationship with God. I found that looking back, raising my kids or our kids, really gave me the strength and the leadership I didn't even really knew I had. And so if you are dealing with something, start with your history and really ground yourself in your knowledge and what you know, and just based on what you've built up to now. And that's how you're going to rebuild. And that's how you're going to find your gift on what to do next. And that's how I did. And I'll explain more in other videos. So make sure that you